Now I invite you kindly, for it is time to arrive to a conclusion that just found its beginning. That's me. The one that found joy in the insignificance of his own birth, but though he never blew out candle lights, he saw fires go up in the ghetto at night. This is Zomkhonto from Makokova, Zimbabwe. And a good place to begin for me, for my story, my people's collective story, is my grandmother, Esther Makakula. Now, if you wish to know about my grandmother, she's a grand piano whose keys accompany sopranos of angels from the tips of their lips into the most secret chambers of heaven. The rhythm carried to the tune of her feet, a tune carried across the sky like a bridal train, whispering incantations of her tribal name. The one used by her ancestors before the world came to know her simply as Esther. I imagine her learning how to answer to that. Esther, 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 Esther. A name she inhabits but cannot spell, which is good as well because names are spells. And that name, if it carried the shame of its own ancestry, will not get to her or bleed down to me. But I researched it to strip it of any perversions and found that in Persia, her name was Hadassah and that Esther was a queen. So although she cannot spell it, it is by no accident that royalty is what it means. Esther. I imagine every time she closed her eyes and rehearsed it, Esther, Esther, Esther. Because naming an African child is an initiation. It is a ritual that awakens the invisible cord that remains intact after the placenta is severed and neatly packed into a blanket.
A commercial and
so sorry, go ahead, please.
It's all right, it's all right. I'll take it back to that part. Okay, so I said, let's go back to that time. She's imagining it when she closed her eyes and rehearsed it, Esther. Because naming an African child is an initiation. It is a ritual that awakens the invisible cord that remains intact after the placenta is severed and neatly pegged into a blanket and buried in the brown earth at the foot of a giant tree. That way, the child's first cry is imprisoned by that tree's roots, even if the fruit of that tree chooses to gossip about it sweetly. And in case demons of the night steal it and make rainstorms out of its purity. Oh, but I imagine that her birth was attended to by midwives with gemstones for eyes, sapphire stones for nipples, and breasts that hang like the pendants of the mountain spirits. Those said to have portals that lead straight to the front steps of every planet known to the universe. She knows wisdom by the feel of its skin. She has run her fingers like a pianist along the spine of time, a spine so vast like that of a matriarch elephant, as she moves silently. Vast like piano keys made of ebony and ivory, composing the songs that pulse underneath the 3 generations of black skin, the royal matriarch of the house of Swazi, Umakakula, Mtombeni, Chwala Minyela, Gochela, Bahlalilinda, Mkhonto, Tunjani, Mzilanhlisiyo, Msuthu. Your praise names are the blood that courses in my veins, traveling pathways that raise the fires that bring warmth to my skin. I imagine your shadow follows you religiously and even keeps your secrets intimately. Like why you wake up at 4 a.m. to pray for strangers in wars, soldiers in coffins, emaciated children who will never know the love of a grandmother. You are a whirlwind of possibility. Makakula, your smile is God's favorite memory, Makakula. You are the music that you play, the conductor and the sound, the singer and audience, an entire population in one human being. The melody to which each morning sings, the soundtrack to the rising sun. Bayete. Now, that woman, my grandma, is one of the many women of color of whose wombs, we're crawling with survivors. A whole thread of souls that this world has not made any pretense of obliterating. The Congo, Zimbabwe, apartheid South Africa, and post-apartheid South Africa. But like my grandmother, we survived that erasure. Now, this is how we did it. Because as we grow older, we get to know things more intimately. Like burn victims, whose fingers linger over photographs saved from the fires whose flames, though twice higher in memory, could never scorch their remembered skin. Images that say, here's the evidence, the texture of how we survived erasure. We measure time as if each second carries desires and mysteries that can only be known by feeling a little deeper. Running our fingers over the ashes of the phoenixes that burned down where we once stood, thinking that maybe we could rummage in those ashes and perhaps find ourselves a feather as keepsake, the one that rejected the inferno and ejected itself. Reclaim it and weigh it in my hair and say, even though this belongs to the person I burned down, I'll weigh it next to my crown. Proof that I did not learn to fly today, but that I survived erasure. As we grow older, we know not only why the sun rises, but that it surprises us time again with how resilient and resplendent our own spirit is. That we emerge from our dreams like jet streams into another day, collecting in our own mouths like spring water, baptizing the lips of eardrums with kisses of poems and hymns. We know that the moon knows of the moon dust in our eyes, which glows when comets and shooting stars light up the sky, and we are once more alive with possibility. We become masters of both joy and tragedy and can emerge from long silences with a renewed love affair with our own native tongues, the ones that survived erasure. We know that everything slung on one's back for too long needs to be placed down, left right there on the ground. That favorite song should be placed once too often, so that should our houses be burned down, we have immortalized the sound. We spend our days as a child erasing concepts we do not even understand. How many of us still use erasers after this day? The ones at the end of that pencil so full of lead, like our brothers laying dead in the streets. The ones who never survived erasure. And we become accustomed to having been alive this long. Longer than Park, longer than Big, longer than ancient trees. We learn that trees dress up in colors in the fall as if for a prom dance. That breath itself is a homecoming dance from the world's fires, and that each morsel of air clears the smoke like a mother's hand. We understand that not all things can possibly be remembered, but that the faces etched in the flesh of our memories' canvas are like a compass back to the worlds that we have lived, the lives that we've touched, and that every brushstroke is a moment in time, the beauty of knowing we are here. We're here. We are here because we belong in the picture. We belong in that photograph. And as we run our fingers on it, we become comforted by our own defiance, that despite all the things that ever tried to burn us down, burn us alive, we survived erasure. We survived erasure. We survived erasure. Zomkhonto kavatela mzilagata mpangasita. Now, that survival itself, as much of a comfort as it can be on those trying days, it is a reminder that we brought children into this world too, which sometimes feels like the most selfish thing to do, the most selfish thing one can do. But we do not stop growing our families just because there is a likelihood that they will get expunged in this cruel world. So knowing the attack on the Black child, for instance, I wrote this letter to my son and all the Black boys. Dotana yami, I wish you mountains that stoop down and crumble the tufts of hair on their crown, to create beach sand for shores that this world will not stumble into and dare to pollute, where the music of ancient flutes is trapped in shells that populate its blanket of pebbles and stones, which when thrown against the old surface of the ocean, with each bouncing motion whistle back the secrets of the snails that died inside them, carrying hell on their backs and heaven inside their hearts. Those said to have slowed down deliberately and sacrificed themselves so their shells can become refuge for the songs whose melodies are now known for guiding the bruised heaps of lost sheep back home. My son, I wish you to speak bright words the way light was named, with sound in attendance, and that I live long enough for the chance to tell you the story of how light and sound learned to dance together for the first time, trapping the universe in 1 trillion light years of rhythm. Dr. Nayam, I wish that as you whisper your own name, you believe it, that each letter in it is a feather inside the largest wing to ever host the wind. And that when you fly, you are not distracted fighting that wind, but just enjoying the aerial view. My son, I want to take all the insults of this world on your behalf, so that you find half of the world's untruths about Black boys already shelved in a bunker somewhere. I would have walked back and forth through time to collect each falsehood and hold it captive in the underworld, not to burn a single one, but to remind you that another generation will soon need you to collect the other half. Make sure the collection is complete, then have a bonfire and invite the neighbors, all singing together, screaming, "Fuck the racist." Dr. Nayam, I wish your teenage eyes will take long walks inside the hallways of history begging to be written, and that those that died gritting their teeth while holding onto olive branches can see you plant seeds and be proud. And that seeing you hunger to know more disarms their spirits and charms them into forgiving the trees from which the spears that dug into their chests were carved. My son, I wish you the rarest form of love, the one that plays catch with itself, throwing boomerang kisses at the sky, knowing the love will come back glowing with the remnants of dying stars, and that each tiny sparkle of those dying stars will hustle its way back into a fully blown sun. My son, I wish that you know that the hourglass will always be a desert full of seconds, ticking away until you're brave enough to shatter the glass and find water. Because that's what I wish for you. I wish I wish you water to flow towards your future, like hip hop, like poetry. My son, I wish you an elephant's memory so that you remember to forget what they did to me. Write that debt to ancestry. Find your identity. But more than anything, I wish you to remember that you are royalty. Bayete, Zomkhonto, kavatela gwane, amangwane. Now, these letters, like the one I just wrote to my son, they're so important in the greater scheme of things. Because if it were up to me, we would write so many more for all those for whom life has left tongue-tied or cut off their tongues entirely, or those whose tongues are in the waiting line for the rugged knife that is over time silenced generations. Letters for our daughters, for our mothers, for our friends, or even our enemies who could see us in a different light under uncolonized circumstances. Letters like this one that I wrote about Africa, because truly this love letter to Africa, if it were up to me, if it were up to me, Africa would have declared its existence in a whisper. But our humanity is like loudspeakers, so colorful and loud, that the world yearned to take more than just pictures. They erected systems that stripped us of ourselves while claiming to hide our nakedness, made us victims of a sickness that severed our connectedness. And as they undressed us, octopus hands patted us down as if we had stolen our birthright, and that somewhere in the deep pockets of our melanin, they would find graves so dark, so black, like our skin, to bury us in. If it were up to me, each campus point would confess to the biographies lost at gunpoint, give up the totems of each broken slaves, surrender each wave that leapt out of the sea to wipe off surnames torn from the bark of trees, where countless were hung from tips of their native tongues. Each campus point will confess to the coordinates of those maps that dug furrows etched permanently on our conscience, but silenced by our songs and dances. Naked drums scattered across the atlas, each echoing different flavors of blackness, dancing to the beat of our humanity, so colorful and loud. Way before tongue-in-cheek speeches from leeches that justified empire's reaches, way before tires screeching, midnight lynchings, and wise teachers missing from the classrooms of each generation, only if it was up to me. But pray, it is not up to me. I ask tormenting questions. I might ask, who weaponized my identity? How many college degrees does it take to be free? Who holds the master key? But that's what you think. No, deep down, honestly, all I want to ask is simply, what hand guides the blue Nile from Ethiopia, Sudan, then Egypt? Is there some database above or below that holds the footprint and glow of the entire Bantu people whose noses are bridges to the breadth of ancient times? I want to ask, do the Khoisan hide medicines that have never been found ever since healers changed surnames and their scepters changed hands? Simple questions, as curious as the eyes of those that have dreamed of the motherland and never been, or the African with muscle who idolizes Scarface in a hustle he never wins. If you've ever watched an African child play, you would know that all the artificial intelligence could not compute even a minute fraction of the innocence. We all wish upon a star in a reality that tempers with our galaxy until our universe is the black market of what it used to be. But I still know of some who, if it were up to them, they would invest all their savings for this craving to be free. Free like the voices of the griot in Mali that shoulder the secrets of ancient. The way the hills that surround Kigali in Rwanda carry tea plantations of even I wonder. Free like arrows from hunters of the Hadza people in Tanzania that stare elephants in the eyes and wipe away their memory. Free like birds made of soapstone from the Zimbabwe ruins, which fly into the lucid dreams of young men like love letters from the dead. Free to dream the dreams of Miriam Makeba, Patrice Lumumba, Nina Simone, Thomas Sankara, Pilandwandwe, Marcus Garvey, Wangari Matari, Ya Asantewa, Kunzingwa, Ken Saro-Wiwa, Joshua Nkomo, Winnie Mandela, and all the dreamers combined. and as clear of mind as Dr. Samuel Achilefu, the Nigerian scientist that developed glasses that see cancer cells, the deep wells of all our aspirations underneath our breast and our chest, screaming, it's up to us, it's up to us, it's up to us. Zomkhonto, Kabati, Mzilangada, Bangazita, Kulumasu, Kulumasu.
Udlunga nelikandaba udlunga ematulumaneni baze wasa amatulume esitikela usishaka kashayeki unodumo ehlezi kwamezi ilevele kwamanye amalebe ngokhalipha inkomo ekhala emthonjaneni izizwe zonke zizwile okunina iziwe umathunjwa setengweni ezaziwa umancenga.
Thank you.
Izwa lethu.
Izwe lethu.